Hello, everyone. Good morning to all. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Ahmet. I am the Regional Pre-Sales Manager in Barikat Cybersecurity based in Doha, Qatar. We really appreciate taking your time today to join us Rediscover Incident Response with Binalyze AIR session. This is the one of our webinar series when we had really great webinars so far at different platforms, and it will be continue for later schedules. We will continue to inform you for following events through emails and social media notifications. Please continue to follow us from our social accounts, which will be shared after the webinar. We hope you can join those webinars if you miss any parts, and if you want to watch the session. This session will be recorded for on-demand purposes, and so the link will be shared for unable to join registered guest and customer. You can catch it if you might have some missing parts. Also, we are expecting and requesting from you, inviting your colleagues and share this content as valuable asset for utilizing as well. Today, this webinar will be shared session. We are here as Barikat Cybersecurity and Binalyze together. Very soon, our special panelist, Emre, Tınaztepe, founder and managing director, will be on stage from Binalyze, and I will hand over to him for Binalyze AIR solution details. And he will present an open discussion on how to automate incident response, how to shorten time for the incidents, giving the response to all incidents, and which areas can be addressed by this solution. Before handing over to the Emre, there's some housekeeping notes here. Today's session will be in 3 different sections. First part will be Binalyze solution details, around 30 minutes. Followed with a live demo 15 minutes, and we reserve 10 minutes Q&A session at the end. Emre will answer your question in the session. If you type your question in the chat box, I will moderate them during the session, or we will answer them in Q&A part. Yes, Emre, we can start. We so pleased to have enjoyed today with you. I'm going to hand it over to you. Stage is yours.
Thanks a lot, Ahmet. Should we wait a bit more for the rest of the audience, or should we head started?
We can start.
So it's being recorded right now?
Yes.
All right, great. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Today we'll be covering Binalyze AIR in the shortest amount of time possible, and then we'll make a short demo. I know it's so hot there, so that's why we won't be boring you with the technical stuff. Let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Emre Tınaztepe, and I'm the managing director of Binalyze and also the founder. I've been in the industry for the last 13 years in all the possible roles, in especially malware analysis and incident response. Based on what we have experienced in the last decade, we have founded Binalyze in 2018. And the aim of Binalyze is reimagining digital forensics and incident response. Because as most of you know, digital forensics is a really mature industry, and sometimes we call it digital forensics is 40 years old, and there are a lot of methods which needs to be adapted into the current needs of threat landscape. For this purpose, Binalyze was founded in New York and Tallinn. Our team is composed of 13 experienced personnel, mostly from law enforcement, cybersecurity, and military background. Prior to forming Binalyze, our team had a chance to work with, especially in North US, with more than 10 million customers. This brought our team a chance to deal with easy to use solutions, which creates high word of mouth effect. That's why when a potential customer or a user uses our product, it immediately, he or she immediately suggests the software, the solution to his colleagues, because it really decreases the time for responding to an incident. Before we dive into the details, these are the references we were able to get in the in the first 2 years of Binalyze. PwC and Deloitte, as you all know, is among the 4 big auditing companies. Estonian Defense Forces, Gendarmerie General Command. They've been using the product in 30,000 devices. And Forensic Sciences Institution. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I'm quite good at remembering where I was. So we can answer them and keep going. Ahmet, should I open the Q&A? You're tracking it, right?
Yeah, I'm tracking and I will moderate it.
All right, great. So before we start, we have 2 products. It all started with Binalyze AIR, which is the individual collector 2 years ago. And the reason for AIR's development is totally based on the need as incident responders, because we've been in the field for more than a decade, and AIR was our first solution. AIR was the ultimate solution for fixing the problems we were facing by ourselves in the field. And then we have started to receive a lot of feedback from especially enterprise customers for creating something which will be remotely deployable and which will enable their teams to remotely acquire evidence in an enterprise environment. So that led to the development of Binalyze AIR. AIR is the abbreviation for Automated Incident Response. It fully automates the evidence collection, and it performs this in real time. By saying real time, we'll be we'll be making some demos on how to integrate it with, let's say, Splunk or any other SIEM in the market. You can perform acquisitions either manually, triggered, or scheduled. By saying scheduled, you can schedule acquisitions or any other task for your critical assets, such as domain controller or, let's say, mail server. Integration of the product is quite easy, thanks to the RESTful integration. And based on the initial findings, you'll be seeing the report after demo. Based on the initial findings, you also have an opportunity to perform triage with ER+. Most of the time, our users ask us, like, what is AIR? Is AIR EDR? Is it a SIEM? Is it a SOAR? Actually, it's a quite new product for the market, and that's why it actually positions in the middle of all these 3 utilities. As you all know, EDR is the reaction, because antivirus products were not able to detect or respond to the modern cyber threats. So that's why we have started to use endpoint detection and response. And SIEM is acting as the central point for all the alerts you receive from your solutions, the solutions in the enterprise. And SOAR is for automating the response and orchestrating these products. But we still have a missing part, which lets us capture the forensic state of an endpoint, which can be easily investigated by level 1 to level 4 analysts or any other MDR provider, let's say. So AIR sits right in this region, and this field is quite new. That's why we don't have a name for that, but it will probably be something like enterprise forensics. So our product is mostly closer to enterprise forensics rather than like incident response, other fields of incident response. Let's talk about antivirus. Then we will switch to EDR, and we will make some. We'll watch a real-world scenario, which will tell us the need for Binalyze AIR. As you all know, antivirus is dead. Like, this is how most of the enterprises accept this fact. And they also made the graveyard of AV. And in the last 3 to 4 years, we have started to utilize, most of the companies started to utilize a switch from antivirus to EDRs. In my opinion, they're merging now. So that's why we have started to see this kind of a scheme. EDR lets you identify, protect, detect, and respond. And in some solutions, they also provide you some recover options. And antivirus is sitting right in this stage. Can you see my mouse, by the way, Ahmet?
Yes, we can see.
So understanding the message here is the key. In my opinion, EDR is another way of saying that you will be hacked or there will be a breach, but when that breach happens, you will need these tools to investigate or respond to that breach. That's an alternative way of saying it. So that's the reason we are using EDRs now. But the problem with these solutions is, as you all know, MITRE recently made a test using the tactics and techniques of APT29. So they made a simulation in an enterprise environment using the exact same methods used by a prominent APT group. And you may be expecting the products were able to prevent and detect all of these techniques, but unfortunately, even the biggest providers of EDR solutions, none of the companies were able to detect 100% of these techniques. And even though MITRE is trying to stay neutral, so they're not announcing any scores or any ratings. There are a lot of companies who made the assessment by themselves, one by one, and the result is there is no 100% coverage. And actually, we are already persuaded that 100% coverage will not be possible, because if somebody says 100% coverage is possible, then we won't be talking about the cybersecurity, or we won't be talking about the security posture of an enterprise. So that's why we still need a huge automation for all these tasks. And in the end, we have to accept that breach happens. Do you have any questions?
So far, no question. I will let you know.
All right, okay. Now I'll show you a really interesting video, which we have found 2.5 years ago before we founded Binalyze. It was quite enlightening because after watching this video, we have found ourselves in the exact same scenario for the last 10 years. This is a video which was prepared by Harvard Medical School. It's a 2-minute video, and it describes how bacteria evolves in a megaplate, as you can see in the video. So the test is, even though it's really short, it quickly describes the current situation in the cybersecurity industry. So they split the plate into 9 bands. On the right and leftmost side, there is no antibiotics. And starting from the first band, there is 1 times stronger antibiotics, and there's 10 times stronger, 100 times, and 1,000 times stronger antibiotics. In normal conditions, when you put bacteria from both sides, normally we would expect bacteria to die when it hits the one times stronger band. But that's not the case. Somehow, a bunch of bacteria gains resistance against the antibiotic, and it keeps spreading even in the antibiotically filled area in this one. And then this occasion keeps going in the next stages, as you can see. And in both sides, when the bacteria hits the 10 times stronger antibiotic, it keeps spreading, and even in bigger amounts. And then it hits the 100 times. And this is, by the way, what we have been doing for the last decade in the antivirus companies we were working, previously founding Binalyze. And in the end, the bacteria hits the 1,000 times stronger bacteria area, antibiotic area, and it keeps spreading there. And the bacteria here is now called a superbug. And if somehow a superbug is introduced to our bodies have no way of doing anything, and it's just mortal for any human being. So now Binalyze is the solution which lets you identify how the bacteria got into the center of your enterprise and let you see this whole picture as an easy to understand report. Even though it's short, like it's 2 minutes, it quickly summarizes the solution and the problem.
Actually, Emre, personally,
Sure.
this is one of the best analogy I have ever seen for describing the threat evolution. And in practical word, you know, how much we strengthen us against the attackers. Attackers are also developing new tactics and techniques, which means attacks and the threats are becoming more sophisticated and complex. And
exactly,
all we agree the breach will happen. And actually, it is very scary, but is reality. I want to ask the question to you. With the traditional methods, only using the traditional technologies, is it enough for us?
Thanks a lot. The answer to this is no, it's not enough. And as I stated in the beginning, EDR is the alternate way of saying that there will be a breach, but companies are not saying this because most of those companies are originally antivirus producers. So that's why they have now switched to EDRs. And we all know that this is not sufficient, like there will be a breach. The important thing is how you will respond to it. And the current methods of responding to cybersecurity incidents is insufficient because we still didn't accept that fact. Like we still didn't, most of the enterprises still think that, okay, we have EDR, we have network access control, we have SIEM deployed, so we have everything, then there should not be a breach. But this is starting to change for most of the companies because they face a severe incident even when they have all these technologies deployed. So the answer is they're insufficient. And most of the time companies are, when they face, even though they have all these security tools deployed, when they face something severe, then they start to search for, and most of the time they go for some non-enterprise tools, which will be time consuming, and they will be using tools not made for this purpose. So I think it's a process of change we are facing now. The companies are slowly accepting the fact that whatever they deploy into their infrastructure, there will be a breach, and then they'll need to respond, they'll need to understand how it happened.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, no question.
Okay. Let me switch the slide. So let's talk about the problems of digital forensics and incident response. By the way, don't be fooled by those DF and IR in the digital forensics and incident response so close together. Unfortunately, they're not that much close, and there's a huge gap between digital forensics and incident response because the methods which were invented 40 years ago for responding to digital forensic cases are not sufficient anymore for modern incident response cases. And the number one problem here is lack of expertise. It's really hard to find someone who has an expertise in digital forensics, and incident response is quite fairly a new topic, in my opinion. Even though the term is quite old, like it's been also more than 25, 30 years, but the practical incident response is quite a new topic. And there's a vast source of digital evidence, and the required time, which is also called dwell time, the time which is required to understand what happened, how it happened, and the scope of the incident is so high. Sometimes it may reach, like, it may be even more than a year, as we have seen in the previous incidents. And there's a need for a methodological approach. Otherwise, by either intentionally or unintentionally, you will be deleting the critical evidence. And there's also the problem is also there's a highly increasing disk sizes in the industry. I was informed that recently, I think Toshiba was the producer. They have produced 100 terabytes SSD devices. So using the traditional approach for imaging a drive will not be sufficient anymore. And there's a wide use of full disk encryption. These are actually the problems of traditional approach, which we'll be covering in the next slide. So before we released Binalyze AIR and IREC, this is how things used to happen. When you receive an alert for some possible incident, the responder turns off the PC, and sometimes they even format. They attach this to a disk applicator by turning off the PC, and they wait for like 8 to 20 hours. Unbelievably, they wait for 8 to 20 hours, and then the investigation can only start once that imaging process is completed. The biggest problem in this approach is one person can only investigate one device in using one image. So there is no collaboration, there is no like integration, and the processing the image could take weeks, even like months. And the common bad practices is most of the time companies are not collecting sufficient evidence, and even they collect some, like, let's say 1 or 2 evidence and then format the device, which makes the hard disk unusable anymore. And the collection process can take days. Think about an enterprise which has, let's say, 5,000 PCs. So the using the traditional approach would even cost years, if not multiple. And there's a need for extensive communication. Whenever something bad happens, the responsible, like the parties, start to call each other in order to understand or in order to find a way of responding to that incident. And in most of the cases, they delete evidence, either intentionally or unintentionally. IREC brings the modern approach, DAS AIR, which is the management console for Binalyze IREC. So it automatically responds to SIEM alerts. You know, most of the time we receive an alert from already deployed solutions such as EDR, SIEM, or any other solution you may imagine. But the problem is we can't respond to them. And even though we have SOAR solutions in our companies, SOAR also needs some additional tools for capturing the image of that endpoint in the modern way. So modern approach is automatically responding to SIEM alerts or any other solution, collecting relevant evidence in 10 minutes. By the way, talking about relevant evidence, I should describe, think about a crime scene, just like the one you see here. So when you go to a crime scene, you don't like collect everything from the crime scene. You just label the important artifacts, which will prove useful in the investigation stage. So that's what AIR does. Exactly, this is the same analogy our product is doing. It requires a few gigabytes only, not terabytes, as compared to the traditional approach. It provides extensive data from the endpoint. We'll be covering what we collect soon. And it helps investigators increase their situational awareness and prioritize alerts. By saying prioritize alerts, as you know, like one of the biggest problems of security industry is false positives. And even for decreasing false positives, AIR is a great utility. By the way, we have already covered the relevant evidence. AIR does not use, most of the time, it does not depend on Windows APIs, like the platform APIs. It uses low-level parsing, which makes things a lot faster. That's the reason we have increased the speed of the product, maybe like 100 times. And there's also 100+ years of cumulative experience based on the management part of Binalyze. And there is no legacy from the traditional digital forensics and incident response solutions. You can see that most of the products in the market are desktop solutions. So one person can run it on a single device for investigating a single image, which really increases the time to resolve. That's not the case in AIR. AIR is web-based, and it makes it possible to investigate a single case, using multiple analysts collaboratively. And this is the stages of incident response. Starting from the inventory stage, you can use AIR even in the ACT stage, which is the last one, because you will have the full picture of that crime scene. We call it crime scene because it's the same even if it's like not a physical one, it's still a crime scene. When do you use AIR is also the last question. Triggered acquisitions via SIEM. You can think of triggers as webhooks, actually. It's an easy, quick and easy way of integrating AIR into other solutions. You can use AIR for hunting for threats and IOCs using Yara and soon Osquery. You can also manually acquire evidence using the management console, or you can schedule acquisitions for VIP or critical assets. When it comes to integrating, AIR is integrating with Splunk Curator, Cryptech, or any other RESTful trigger source. I'll be making a demo on showing how easy it is to integrate, even the CMs we have not seen before, because it's based on the RESTful triggers, so it makes it really easy to create a trigger in the click of a mouse, and that's it.
Emre, I am combining two questions here.
Sure.
You know, for SIEM is the very common tool for the collecting the logs and making correlation to build alarm and alert.
Yeah, that's the core nowadays.
With the Binalyze, is it the bi-directional triggering between the Binalyze and the SIEM, or only you're getting information SIEM and getting alert after that you can start the evidence? What is the relation with the SIEM and the Binalyze?
Sure. Let's not wait for a demo, by the way. Let me show you how it integrates with CMs, and then I'll be answering your question. Okay. So this is the web-based console of AIR. When you click on triggers, you can create a new trigger or use an already created one. Like these are the out-of-box triggers. If you take this URL, for example, this is Splunk trigger. If you take this URL and set this as the post action to your CM, whenever your CM calls this URL, AIR will automatically capture the evidence you have indicated here, as you can see. Browsing history, event logs, full, or let's say you have a security operations center and you want AIR to collect the information which will provide useful for level 1 and level 2 analysts. And whenever Splunk triggers, like sends some action to this URL, things happen automatically in the background, even if it's, let's say, 3 a.m. in the morning. And upon this, we also, so this is the input, like using the CM as the input to AIR, but we also have syslog integration. You can also enable syslog integration, so whenever the acquisition completes, an event is sent to syslog. So this way, once you configure AIR, you won't be leaving your CM or SOAR dashboard, because everything will be happening in the background automatically, and you'll be seeing the actions performed by AIR also in your CM dashboard. I think this was the answer to your question.
Yeah, yes, correct.
So it's bidirectional. Any other questions?
Not so far. I just got two questions and I combined it to ask you.
All right.
If you have any question for participants, you please type in the chat box. I will ask to the Emre.
Sure. So let's talk about the use cases after talking about CM. So you can integrate AIR with your CM for acquiring evidence in a fully automated manner. We have used the term evidence, by the way, a lot. We'll be seeing what that evidence means in a beautifully created report. You can use AIR for investigating CTI alerts regarding stolen credentials being sold on dark web. Think about receiving an alert from your CTI provider, cyber threat intelligence provider, saying that one of the user credentials in your enterprise is being sold on dark web. Now, the only thing you can do is starting an investigation. And most of the time, our users use AIR for, first they discover what computers that account was logged onto, and then they image, like they acquire evidence from all those pieces. Most of the time, this is like 1 to 5, even though in big enterprises, and then you have a full picture of all those devices at your hand, it will be really easy to understand how that credential left the enterprise and found its way to dark web. We can also use it for validating precursors received from your SIEM or ADR. This is especially useful for determining false positives. And you can also capture the forensic state of an endpoint for further investigation, even though you were not able to understand if that alert was a false positive or not. You may still need to capture the forensic state, like take a picture. By saying picture, by the way, think of AIR as a high resolution, 360-degree action camera. So it takes a 360 degrees picture of the crime scene in a really short amount of time, which could be like 5 to 10 minutes. We'll see soon. So you may still need to capture that forensic state for further investigation, or even for forwarding it to some other company you are working with. And this is also true for escalating the investigation by forwarding the reports to more experienced analysts or to some other third-party company you are working, getting consultancy from. And you can also run Sigma rules across the forensic state of an endpoint for compromise assessment. I'll be talking about a recent demo we have experienced in one of our customers. It's an anonymized demo, a case. So in this case, the CTI service provider alerted our customer regarding a leak credential, and the customer acquired the evidence with AIR. In that case, the leak credentials, the owner of the leak credentials, were found to be logged onto 3 computers in the enterprise. And the interesting thing about this case is the endpoint has DLP, EDR, NOC, Antivirus, and our solution deployed. This happened before Corona, like the pandemic. And then 5 months fast forward, they wanted to analyze the collected evidence, and they were able to find traces of passwords.ln, like link file, in both event logs and master file table records, alongside a SanDisk USB drive artifact. And they have found out that there was a excluded SanDisk USB drive, which were allowed by the DLP device. And even though the USB drive was encrypted, which were giving them a confidence because it's encrypted, but the problem was if you attach that SanDisk drive into another device outside of the enterprise, it still works. So they were able to resolve the case even after 5 months following the incident. If you don't have any questions, we can make a quick demo and start with the Q&A session.
We can move forward for demo, yes.
All right. So AIR is an on-premise solution. It's a web-based management console for passive agents. I should emphasize the term passive agent because AIR is not using any methods for like intercepting, blocking, tracing. So it only uses agents for making it possible to respond to an incident in real time. By saying real time, by the way, it uses a real-time connection with the agent. So whenever it receives an alert or whenever you click Acquire Evidence button, as you can see here, as soon as you click Start, the operation starts in second 0. So it's real-time. Apart from that, the agent is 8 megabytes, as our customers most of the time curious, and it does not consume like 30 megabytes, more than 30 megabytes of RAM. So it's really lightweight, and that's why it's called, we call it passive agent. It does not consume any system resources at all. As you can see, the dashboard, there's a dashboard when you open the portal management console, and it shows you the managed and unmanaged devices. It's fully integrated with Active Directory, and it also integrates with the syslog, as you can see here. And you can also define your custom SMTP server. When you click on an endpoint, it shows you some information about the endpoint, like the IP address, the operating system information, and it provides you with 3 actions. First one is acquire evidence. The other one is triage. We'll be talking about triage later. And then you can also schedule acquisitions. So even when there is nothing wrong on that endpoint, let's think that we're talking about critical assets, your domain controllers, your mail servers, or any other VIP assets, we call them. You can still capture or collect important information from those endpoints on a weekly or monthly or daily basis. So when you click on acquire evidence, AIR asks you the acquisition profile. By default, we have out-of-box acquisition profiles, such as browsing history. There is more than 60 evidence types in this list. And if you try to acquire this using traditional forensic methods, it will take you like 8 to 20 hours. And most of the time, you will be losing the volatile evidence, such as the RAM image, page file, and these type of evidence will not be captured properly, especially RAM image. It provides you with out-of-box acquisition profiles, and these acquisition profiles, you can select any of these artifacts, such as the registry, network-related information, UDP table, TCP table, event logs, VMI scripts, mostly used by fileless malware, and process execution traces, such as prefetch files, or other evidence types. And alongside these evidence lists, you also have an opportunity to capture the widely used enterprise applications, such as Apache server, MongoDB, or DNS server, let's say. If the machine is running IIS, then you also have an opportunity to select IIS logs. And here again, we support 60 more evidence types. And you can also customize the evidence by providing wildcards, such as users, / star, asterisk. So this is called the acquisition profile. And once you define an acquisition profile, such as the one we'll be using here, once you define it, then you can easily use this acquisition profile when you start an acquisition on an endpoint. Okay, let's think we are running a SOC and we want our level 1 and level 2 analysts to have this information ready at their hands, regardless of the time of the incident, even if it's like 3 a.m. in the morning or like 5 a.m. in the morning. So you just give a sample name here, and when you press the start button, it automatically starts in real time the processing. And as you can see, it will take, like, this is the same task. It will take 7 minutes and 33 seconds. So just because we don't have that much time, I'll be opening the example case we have acquired like 10 minutes ago. So it provides you, if the machine has an active session, I mean, if there's a user using that machine, you will see this kind of a screenshot. And AIR also collects all the open windows in that session. And it shows you a lot of information, such as the system info, the hashes of the collected evidence, the process tree. And when you click on a process, you also see all the open handles and other stuff, or open like TCP table, let's say, the connections which are made by that endpoint. And think about, you are a level 1, level 2 analysts. Like, this is a really hard to find and collect evidence, all in one easy to understand report and share report. Let's say you are investigating a process. You can click on the VirusTotal details. It takes you automatically to the VirusTotal page, as you can see. You can also discover the relations. It shows you the auto start locations in that endpoint. This is by far the most comprehensive auto start location database. And it shows you the services, the downloaded files, even where they were downloaded from, if they have that identifier, the installed applications in that machine, the volumes, like all the drives and other stuff. It supports collecting browser history for all major browsers, like Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and Internet Explorer, and including Opera. It even shows you the recycle bin. In this case, the recycle bin is empty. such as it even captures the content of clipboard. It's funny, but we were even able to like extract the passwords for CryptoLocker cases from the clipboard in a few cases. Like the firewall rules, the DNS cache, ARP table, whatever you can imagine, which will provide useful, is inside this report. And it not only shows you the evidence, it also lets you search for the collected evidence in all these areas and shows you the number of matches. And you also have an opportunity to convert this report. This is an easy to share report, by the way. It's an HTML file, so you can easily share it with any other third party if you want. But you still have an opportunity to generate a PDF file for documenting or adding it to executives reports, or even using it for the training purposes inside your enterprise. Because this is the exact state of that machine. That's why we call it picture, like the just like the picture, but ending with an IR, a capital IR. So when you create a PDF report, it creates you an extensive PDF which has all the information you have seen in that PDF file. So you can use this for documentation, forwarding, escalating, or for training purposes. And so this was the evidence acquisition part. It will probably take like 7 minutes. And then you also have an opportunity to run, let's talk about the triage rules. For example, let's say you want to search for China Chopper, which is one of the most frequent web shells we have been seeing for the last year. You can create a YAR rule for this, and then you can name this rule as China Chopper rule. Let's add some rule here and save it. When you click on the endpoint, you can click on triage, and you can select that rule here. And when you push the save button, it will automatically assign a triage task. The endpoint does not have China Chopper rule, so we don't need to send that task. But it will show you the number of matches either in process or either in memory. Either in process memory or file system. So you have an opportunity to search for YAR rules either inside file system or in the volatile memory of the machine. And we already talked about the scheduling acquisitions. I think we are running out of time, so we better start with the triggers. And we already covered the triggers, but let me go over it one by one, one last time. So let's say we are creating some SIEM trigger, and we are telling the AIR that whenever this trigger is called by your SIEM or SOAR or EDR, like whatever the endpoint is, use this acquisition profile, save the evidence either to local or evidence repository. Evidence repositories are simply network shares, which can be protected by a username and password. So you also have an opportunity to save the evidence either locally or to a network drive, which will be mapped to the endpoint. And you can also ignore the recurrent execution attempts for the same endpoint. As you know, SIEM or other solutions may generate multiple alerts for the same endpoint. This way, by default, AIR ignores the recurrent execution for the same endpoint for 24 hours. And once you create it, Ahmet, do you have a question?
Actually, you have already given the response, but maybe it's related for details. The question is, for the privacy, even for the daily operations time, and also we had an incident, we had to keep the privacy as it is. And exactly. The question is, especially for the critical business tool like AR, where do you record the evidence we collected? The question, what are our options, and how do we prevent this evidence from being deleted or changed? This is the question came from our participants.
Sure. When it comes to local acquisitions, we have recently added a new feature to IRAC, which is called Binalyze Shield. And this is based on one of the recent cases. One of our clients were not able to collect evidence from an already CryptoLocker encrypted device because whenever they attached the USB drive, everything was being encrypted, including the evidence we collect. So as far as I know, if nobody else implemented that feature in the last month, let's say, our tool is the only solution in the market which can capture this type of evidence from an already infected or CryptoLocker affected machine. And this is also possible for AIR, but this will be possible for the local acquisitions. When it comes to remote acquisitions, AIR maps the remote drive into its own space, so nobody else can access it. That's why there is no concern of leaving the evidence available for the attackers. So, and we also protect the evidence in terms of, in the case of local evidence collection, we prevent any other solution, even like reading it, like forget about deleting or writing or encrypting, let's say, which was the original motivation. We prevent any other application or executable from accessing it using the kernel mode driver. So it works in kernel mode. I think this was the answer.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So this is basically the triggers feature, and we have already discussed triage rules. In the new version, let me open the new version of AIR so I can also show you some cool new feature. We have also added some, we call this editor with the capital IR as always. So it provides you with autocomplete for making it even easier to write the IR rules. And this is the new version of AIR, by the way. So we are making things even faster for increasing the time to respond and time to understand. And do you have any questions, or I can also show you some upcoming version updates?
Actually, one question came. I can challenge you with different way of asking questions, because
sure.
The question is, you are mentioning the shortening this evidence collection time, and for the response time with the AIR, we are reducing this time. The question is, what do you better than other products can't, or do you know what they don't know? Because you are claiming very challenging figures, and what is
like
what
5,
is the,
right?
Yeah, what is the reason behind that you are claiming to reducing this kind of details?
Sure. We had a funny question in the AV industry. When you install an antivirus product, the biggest problem is who is using the PC, antivirus or the user. And this made all the AV companies be paranoid about optimizations. That's why this led to the optimization of antivirus products for the last, let's say, 25, 30 years in order to increase the user experience. And our team is from AV industry background. So that's why Binalyze is, even though it was founded in 2018, it carries the 13 years of experience in optimizations and low-level parsing, especially when it comes to forensic artifacts of the operating system. So that's why, by the way, this is not a marketing argument, Ahmet. Like, you already tested the product by yourself, so you know how fast it works. I want them to personally experience it. As far as I know, there is no other tool in the market which can collect the number of evidence our tool collects in the amount of time we do it. So I think regardless of how I am promoting it, they should be downloading. By the way, we have a 15 days trial for IREX, so they can easily download and test the product by themselves. And they'll see it will take like 5 to 10 minutes. We didn't observe it more than 10 minutes in the worst case. So it's the answer is, it lies, there's a optimization experience based on our previous companies, mostly AV companies, and the experience of the management board is also the biggest factor here, because we are not collecting, as I previously described, we are not collecting every even the ones non-relevant evidence, let's say, but we'll be collecting the ones you will be using for quickly resolving or investigating that case. I think that was the answer.
Yeah, thank you.
So let me talk about the section. This is the new feature we'll be announcing next month. It's called Petrol. You know, as the name suggests, Petrol is visiting your endpoints. Think of it like that way, visiting your endpoints on a scheduled basis, let's say monthly, weekly. And even though you have an EDR, even though you have a network access control, even if you have like antivirus, regardless of whatever tool you have deployed on your endpoints, Petrol collecting all these evidence from the endpoint and processing it, certain signs of, let's say, lateral movement, signs of process injection, or signs of process anomalies. And it does this in a fully automated manner. So after decreasing the evidence collection time, 8 to 20 hours to 10 minutes, now Petrol is decreasing the investigation time from, like, let's say, hours to 7-8 minutes. Let me make you a quick demo so we can understand. So think of it, it's the exact same report, by the way. So what you see here is the same report, but as you can see, there are no tags here. So this is the original version. This is the version which is created by Petrol. This is local storage, so it was cached. That's why I need to rerun it. So it's now investigating all those sections inside this report and adding you some tags such as 4 severity levels: malicious, suspicious, warning, and information. And as you can see, it has created an automatic audit of the system, saying that antivirus is disabled in the system. So rather than digging into the details in all these sections, such as system info, you'll need to check only these sections, saying that PowerShell script block logging is disabled, which is one of the things we observe in most of the incident response cases. Or there's an active RDP session in this machine. Or processes, it shows you some tags. These are the tags created by AIR, such as there's a notepad.exe, which contains a PowerShell command line. Or notepad.exe spawn cmd.exe file, which is a process anomaly. So rather than trying to smoking gun in this case, Petrol will be providing you a really high value tags for increasing the contextual awareness, let's say, situational awareness. And this will also come as a platform addition to Binalyze AIR. Finally, as you can see, like it has investigated the prefetch files, and it shows mimikatz.exe. It was executed in this machine, and tagging it as a hacker tool, wiping tool. So this will decrease the investigation time by a great amount, and it will be like just a few seconds for understanding what's going on in that machine. We also have a Linux support on the way. This is the IREC for Linux. By the way, talking about IREC, let me show. We didn't show it to our
Sorry for
the audience.
Emre. We have 5 minutes left. We have a little bit.
Sure. Okay. Let me switch back to Linux.
We have some question. I'm waiting for you for finishing up this roadmap. Like
to sum it, like long story short, we are working on the Linux version as an individual collector. Now we are adding it to Binalyze AIR. This will make it much more capable in the enterprises who are also using Linux. Let me check this in case I missed something. Okay. Thank you for your time. Now we can start with the Q&A section.
Actually, we have. I have already raised the question to you coming from customer, and two more questions I got. One of them, if the customer doesn't have SIEM, still we can use the Binalyze AIR.
Sure. You can, SIEM is automation. Like, company is not using SIEM. You still have an opportunity to use AIR by investigating the endpoints manually, integrated with your SIEM. But adding makes things even faster. But even without using a SIEM, the amount of evidence you collect with AIR, I think it will still take like up to like 8 to 20 hours for like calling the IT admin, asking for permission, connecting over RDP, running, let's say, 15 different tools. That's the number of tools you need to run for collecting the evidence we collect. And then you can get the amount of information our solution collects from the endpoint. So you can still use it, but it will be a bit more like a bit increase the time, and you won't be automating the response stage.
Okay. The last question for the, I'm taking notes from the customer. Do you have MSSP model for the using this tool, for example, as per the incident base usage?
Sure.
Okay.
Let me ask quickly. I'll ask the product pusher so we can go over it easily.
Okay. I believe this is the all question I tried to ask to you. Whatever any question customer has, they can directly ask to us, and we will reply to them via mails.
Sure. Let me reply the MSP part, Ahmet, and then
Okay.
I'll be done. So the licensing of AIR, it's for companies 1 to 3 year subscription and for MSPs. In the MSP case, managed service providers, they have an opportunity to run the product either for 15 to 45 days based on their needs on the investigation. So when they deploy the product into the network of their client, they will be able to run the product for either 15 to 45 days. And we have 3 licensing levels: SMB, small to medium, enterprise, and SOC edition. SMB is has the same feature set, provides the exact same features with SOC edition. So it means the full feature set comes with it, including the triage with Yara, like integration with syslog and Active Directory. And they can also collect all the evidence types I have described. And so the answer is we support MSPs. They can use our product for quickly responding to their customer support requests.
Okay. Thank you very much, Emre. Let me summarize the keynotes from today's session.
Sure.
We try to address a very important area for cybersecurity lifecycle on the incident response domain. And to be honest, the attackers' motivations are far beyond the defenders. It can be financial benefit gains, ideological or political reasons, and they want to get prestige and reputation. And it might be a curiosity from their side. At the same time, we can feel desperate to overcome such a huge daily changing challenge on our side, and maybe we don't know, we may not know where we can start, how we can manage those threats and incidents. And Binalyze is giving us a fantastic advantage on collection of evidence and shorten incident response time. Today's session is the main aim from this session is the keynotes. And I want to thank you all for your participation. And I want to thank you, Emre, and your team, and also Barikat Cybersecurity team. I hope to meet you again for following webinars. See you soon. Keep safe and secure.
Thanks, Ahmet. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.